grumbled, murmured against Moses because they had nothing to eat. And one of the things that I'd looked over it, I guess many of us have looked over it, they had herds. The people had cattle. They had flocks. They had herds. They had spoiled Egypt. They had everything that the Egyptians had, they brought with them. They're not that far into the wilderness journey, about 3 to 4 months. And while I recognize that there was a large number of people there, there was also, they had come out with a great abundance out of Egypt. Have you ever noticed that our appetites are insatiable? You cannot quench the human appetite. You cannot quench the human appetite. The more we have, the more we want. The more we get, the less content we become. We always want more. You cannot tell me that any of us, wouldn't want something a little better than what we got. And guess what? You say, well, I live in a small place. I'd like a bigger place. My car doesn't run the best in the world. I'd like a better car. And all of us, but guess what? Fifth Avenue in New York, in a high-rise penthouse hotel or apartment, you'd still want more. If you're a billionaire, you still want more. More. They had herds, they had flocks, they had food to eat. I am certain that there was something there. What they wanted was more. They remembered how it was to live in Egypt. And they simply were no longer content to be free, living in God's freedom. Many Christians find themselves reverting back into a lifestyle that is not pleasing to God simply because we're not content to live where we are. Paul said that godliness with contentment is great gain. What does that mean? The man who has learned to be content with his situation has gained more than all the world can offer. How can we make that statement? Because contentment is so hard to grasp. It is. Contentment, there is always something else out there. I remember when I finally became content with my job. Because I went through a spell where I wasn't getting paid enough. I didn't have the job that I enjoyed enough. It didn't seem like it was meeting my financial needs and the needs of my family enough. I wasn't content. And so I went out and started putting in applications. I soon found out that we had pretty good benefits compared to other places that were wanting to hire. I didn't think about it, but I was going to have to start all over with my vacation, accumulating. I'm up to 4 weeks vacation. I've been there for a long time, so I've earned that over the years. But I'd had to start over just like a new guy. And then I started finding out, well, you know, some of the things that they want you to do in these other jobs, I've got it made where I'm at. I remember when I became content. And there's a peace that comes with that. What we find is that the children of Israel were out in the middle of the wilderness. They had provision from God, but they were not content with it. And so they desired more. I want to talk for just a second here. We talked about the manna. I'm not going to belabor this, but I do want to talk about this for just a second because as I was studying through it, it came to mind. Moses said unto Aaron, take a pot and put an omer full of manna therein, and lay it up before the Lord to be kept for your generations. Now, omer is not that. An omer is pretty close to a bushel. A bushel. Take a pot and put an omer full of manna therein and lay it up before the Lord to be kept for your generations. And according to Hebrews 9, chapter 9, verses 4 through 5, which had the golden censer. This is a reference to the Ark of the Covenant. Here it says, which had the golden censer and the Ark of the Covenant overlaid round about with gold, wherein was the golden pot that had manna, and Aaron's rod that budded, and the tables of the covenant, and over it the cherubims of glory shadowing the mercy seat, of which we cannot now speak particularly. There was the Ark of the Covenant contained 3 articles. It contained the tables of the covenant, the 10 Commandments on the stone tables. It had Aaron's rod that had budded to prove his rightful position as high priest when his position was challenged by others, and the pot of manna. Now, why was the pot of manna included in the Ark of the Covenant? These were laid up for generations. In other words, they were put in there to show, to be remembered over time. The Bible says that they were fed for 40 years with manna, but nobody had ever seen it before, and no one ever saw it since. It was put there as a reminder of God's provision because nobody would have known what they were talking about. We don't know what manna looks like, do we? It gives us a kind of a description, but we don't see it. Why? Do you know that God intended for us to be able to see it? You think about that. Come on, think about that. Why else would he have had it laid up for a period? He said, put it in the ark, an omer of it, so people would be able to see it, so they would be able to know what I used to feed the people in the wilderness. But look over here in 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 9. They found the Ark of the Covenant and they opened it up. And it says, there was nothing in the ark save the 2 tables of stone which Moses put there at Horeb, when the Lord made a covenant with the children of Israel when they came out of the land of Egypt. At the time of Solomon, Solomon brought in the ark into the temple, the new temple that he had built. And they dedicated the priesthood. And they had everything laid out. And they brought in the ark. And they found out that people had not taken care of the Ark of the Covenant. They had gotten sloppy with it. They had not paid attention to it. And they had lost some things from it. These things that had been lost from it, and let me tell you now, they've even lost the ark now. They don't even know where it's at. You'll hear different things where it may be under the Temple Mountain in a chamber hidden under there. But the facts are that they don't really know where it's at. If they do, we don't know where it's at. The manna, if you remember last Sunday, we talked about the manna being a representation of Christ, the bread that came down from heaven, that fed and supplied the need. It was the nourishment that they needed in the wilderness. Do you know that it is possible in your life to live so sloppy that you lose Christ? It is. It is possible that everything on the outside, you've kept the gold polished up and you've got it spit shine, and somehow or another you open up the life and you look inside and the contents are missing. The law of God, what did that represent? That represented God's authority. That was still there, which means all that was left, the priesthood, the priest, that intercession between God and man was gone. Aaron's rod that budded, that's what it represented. And the bread that had come down from heaven, it wasn't in there anymore. All they had left was legalism. Legalism passes off nowadays as religion. It passes off today as spirituality. But without the other implements, it is a bondage and a burden. all mankind of Christ.